This is Perek Vav, Chelik Aleph, Perek Vav in Orot HaKodesh. If you have not heard the introduction video, which I put out before this one, so it's definitely recommended to listen to that video, watch that video before trying to learn this piece. It's just a lot of important introductory information that helps to get through this. This is a very long piece. Try to do it in two videos. I think we're going to break it into two halves. So let's just start. It's called Ha'aras Maise Bereshis Maise Merkava. Literally means ha'ara from the language of or, which means like a revelation, which is discussed already until now. Kind of means there's like like we can't actually see light. You see things in a certain light. So we're talking about that's really what revelation is. I'm right now revealing myself through this thing, this body, this set of tools, and that's the word ha'ara means also to sort of try to have an exposure to or to have be revealed to us Maise Bereshis, which is a very simple sounding phrase, the act of creation, that is an incredibly there's a lot of layers, and I don't even use the word complexity, just a lot of elements that need to be understood to really understand what Maise Bereshis is. And this is kind of going to give us a little bit of a sense of almost like where to look as we look around the world around us to sort of see Maise Bereshis unfolding, and then also how that leads in essentially to Maise Merkava. I'll just remind, just in this video, that the analogy we used in the introduction was that you could think of Maise Merkava, Maise Bereshis as kind of Maise Merkava is like the intangible top of a hierarchy, and Maise Bereshis is the tangible bottom. And so you're learning about Maise Bereshis, so you're kind of learning all these rules about how physics works and how the world works and all these different things, but there's an automatic chain, what's called in Kabbalah Hishtalshelut, which is like there's like a devolving, going from the intangible down to the tangible as intangible reality is translated into what you see on the tangible side. And so when you learn Maise Bereshis, so inevitably you're going to start encountering gateways and cues and triggers that lead you towards Maise Merkava. So they're inextricably linked. Structures, or it's really one idea. You can think of reality as kind of just being this structure that it's very whole, and there's all these different aspects to it, some of which are more intangible, some of which are less intangible, that are more tangible. And as we've discussed, our bodies and our experience of ourselves through our bodies is actually an analogy for that larger structure of all of reality, which is that you are actually an intangible self. You have a lot of different tools that you use, some of which are increasingly more and more tangible as you descend through the analogous structuring from the self being at the top, going through your perceptions, your thoughts, your emotions, and then your actual physical manifestation, your action side of things. So that same translation going from intangible all the way to tangible, which again is very mysterious. So we are today trying sort of starting to uncover that. It is exactly analogous to these ideas that we're talking about here in terms of the broader reality and how it's structured. And the intangible side is Maise Merkava, the tangible side is Maise Bereshis, and these things are, again, not only are they linked, they are almost like you can't really see where one begins and the other one ends off. They're just one not homogenous, but they just translate one into the other. And what's fascinating, just if you think about ourselves as the analogy for this, is that we actually are beginning to see that. In other words, the mystery of thought and the mystery of perception and where these things happen and the relationship between the brain and consciousness and how the nervous system functions in terms of its connection to ourself, and all these things are basically grappling with the fact that there are certain very visible aspects of this thing that we can measure in different ways, and there are more intangible aspects that we don't even understand where they are. And in fact, if they are truly intangible, they can't even be in a where, because things that are intangible cannot be in a location. By definition, they are not spatial. So to try to figure out what is the linkage between that which is intangible, which is you, and that which is tangible, which is your body and the different tools that come with your body, that is basically what we're doing now. And when you're using measuring tools to sort of understand parts of the body, and you can kind of say, okay, well, here is a nerve system, and here is a neural structure in the brain doing something that lights up on different tests, and then trying to sort of follow that up further to the thoughts and the self that is behind that, and the tools kind of don't work as well for that part. So we're trying to figure out, well, what tools can we use to even encounter that aspect of the self, that the part that is more intangible. And as we climb further and further into that and uncover more, so we're really uncovering Hashem, because we're uncovering the intangible side of reality, which is the consciousness, the nishmat, the nishmatin, the soul of souls, and we're getting to that through our own soul, through our own consciousness, And so our consciousness is kind of like the gateway to that super consciousness that we call Anochi Hashem Elokecha. So that's really what we're talking about here. And let's try to read a little bit and see if we can get through at least half of this in this video. So he writes, we're talking about now investigations, scientific investigations. It goes and it uncovers all kinds of very clear, nuanced, understandings, implications, ideas. Within all the different kinds of triggers and structures and little pieces of tohu and vohu. So this is a phrase that is extremely loaded. Tohu vohu is a phrase from the beginning of Parshas Bereshis, and it basically refers to, we'll just use it like this for now. It refers to the environment that we're in. If any listeners have experience with computer programming, so a good analogy for this is the programming environment that you use. There's all kinds of, there's kind of like an environment you have to kind of download or get or buy or whatever, where you then type in your code into the environment, and the environment then has pre-programmed from other software programmers who wrote the environment, has a whole series of included tools and rules that will take your statements and your codes and turn it into something. So you could think of Tohu as like the raw materials. It's the environment in its almost primordial form, where it's just raw and there's just all the different things that are kind of going on. This is like the backdrop with all of its ingredients that is behind all things. So that's where we are. Again, this is another, that when we described earlier a few minutes ago, just that the whole realm that we kind of live in with its tangibles and intangibles, the totality of that is referred to as Tovavo also. And that has a lot more implications as well, but we're not going to delve into that this second. Kishakot Tnuos. When all movements, all dynamics, that exist and also existed before in more primitive forms, when they are really, when all the movements and dynamics and developments and evolutions that you see in the world around you, when they're all really kind of at a stage where they're evolved enough to be in harmony with the overall direction and purpose, the ultimate, Binyana Gamor means like the finished product of what this is all about. So when all the movements are kind of going towards it in a very harmonious way, so through that, so what's happening is the chachma, the principles of Maaseh Bereshis, that whole set of rules that is what we call Maaseh Bereshis, which is the rules that apply to the more tangible side of the system that we're describing. Lios Yosef Yosef Chachma Gluyas. Then it basically means that now the Maaseh Bereshis Chachma is becoming more and more revealed and clarified and open, and everyone can kind of see it. People are then are demanding that. And everyone is kind of like they're getting sustained by this. It's like we're understanding. It's the theory of everything. We're trying to get greater understanding of what this is about. So, and that's something which is very fascinating. It's very necessary. We want this. And again, referencing the introduction video in terms of technology and development of the things that are in our lives, and that's really what that is. That's the process of seeking to understand in that system, where really unraveling and uncovering all these different aspects and nuances and depth of what's in the tangible side of things, and that's something which we want. And so, if you kind of isolate the tangible side from the intangible side, and you fixate on the tangible side, and you make your whole life about that, then you might feel like you're lacking something because you don't have the larger aspects and you're kind of fixating on one or two things. It's kind of like, if a person fixates on their career, or they fixate on only one of their relationships, but they let other parts of their life fall to the wayside, then that can really, they can become very unbalanced, and their lives will become warped. We call that leading an empty existence, but if you think about it, it's empty only because many aspects of the person's life are kind of now lacking, while this one is being hyper focused on. So that's really what we're talking about here. It's the idea of fixating on the Maaseh Bereshis is something which, if you fixate on it, in an isolation, then you might find that a lot of your life is not really functioning properly. Which is, again, like I mentioned in the introduction, is a go-to for if you're a spiritual / religious person and you like to use more classic types of phrases. People will throw around things like, yeah, well, life's not about money, or it's not about your job, or things that really matter are things that are your relationships, or would you really want to spend more time in the office? Is that what you're going to regret on your deathbed? These are all things that are reactions to hyperfixation where you're fixating so much on Maaseh Bereshis that now you're lacking connection to the intangible side of things, and then it's like, well, we're trying to rebalance that, so we say intense things, trying to move you towards a more balanced place where now you have Maaseh Bereshis and Maaseh Merkava. But the truth is that if you are a very deep person and you have a lot of Maaseh Merkava going on, so then you can be very intensely internal and you don't have enough Maaseh Bereshis going on, then the imbalance is the other way. That's a really serious problem too, because if you are deeply investing in relationships in a lot of, in intense, intangible aspects of your life, but you don't really spend so much time focusing or investing on the Maaseh Bereshis side, so then you might also find that your life is now lacking expression of the self inside of the world around you. You're not really leaving the mark that you need to leave, and that's really why you have to have kemach. There's to also be like what's called flour in Pirkei Avos. You have to have real physical, tangible side of things as well, and you really have to be a harmonious blending of these two things and constantly be related to each aspect of the format that you are, the intangible and the tangible, and all that's in between as well. So that's really why the Ramchal, in all of his writings, constantly emphasizes how you are a hybrid. We are all hybrid, intangible, translating down into tangible creatures. And if you're not relating to everything along the way in the chain of what you are, you will be lacking. So that and the whole system, what we call mitzvos, is essentially designed to help you relate to all these different facets of this structure that you actually are. A classic example is kashrus and kosher food, which essentially is about eating things that are just like your, let's say this is your structure, so you want to eat something which is the same structure as that, so that way all the different aspects of you can be sustained by all different aspects of this food, including its intangible source in Hashem, all the way down to its physical manifestation. And if you're eating something which is not rooted in Hashem in a parallel way to you, so you're eating something which is only this size, but you're this size, all of this is now not getting sustained. So there's a whole system here about the different aspects of yourself. And again, the underlying assumption that we have here is that the Torah is actually real. It's not that it's true and it's a religion and if it's a philosophical idea. The Torah is a real description of reality, which if it is a real description of reality, so then that means that all these things are real. And that means that if you eat non-kosher, it's not just that you did something wrong. It's that you now are living in a way that is not in harmony with the truth, with the reality of what you actually are. So it's kind of like before we knew what germs were, so people would actually, live in ways that were not in harmony with the dangers of bacterial growth. And so they pay the price for that. The price for that is that you now can get diseases because those diseases are there. Just because you decided not to see them or you don't know about them doesn't mean that now you're going to be exempt from the natural consequence of reality, which is simply there below the level of what you're able to see because you have not learned enough or trained yourself enough to actually see what's going on beneath these things. So that's what the Torah is. It's supposed to be the book that we learn and teach that is designed to capture and describe reality in the broadest possible language and way. So going on a little further, according to the amount of preparedness, according to the amount that the world is prepared for the secrets, the hidden aspects of the Maaseh Bereshis, the Chachma of Maaseh Bereshis, so it's similar in tandem, in parallel. So you have the same, you have a parallel development of the Chachma Yetzirah Ruchanis, which means the Maaseh Merkava, the more intangible side. And when you do that, so then these things become, like we said, blended. Misgavlim, like the lashon of gibul, they become basically blended, mixed together. So that's what we're trying to do. So the more you develop one, so you kind of also raise up the potential and the discovery of the other one as well. So let's see a little further now. This is a little bit of a hard part. Let's see if you can read through this and make this clear. So the divine truths, or divine truth, that is kind of sealed with the truth that is beyond, what we call objective truth, which means that which is beyond. The word beyond means, the word object means something which is over there. It's separate from you. Subject is you, and object is over there. And so we're saying that which is Elyona, again, the same analogies as in previous videos, that above means kind of separate or beyond, transcendent. So we're talking about objective truth. And objective truth, it's a fascinating concept by itself because objective truth means something which remains true irrespective of whether there's anyone to perceive it. It's the answer to the question of trees falling in forests where no one's there to hear it. So objective truths are always there. They are principles that are woven into the tohu of reality. And so if tohu, it doesn't exist anymore because Hashem would turn that off, so then this whole system would just cease to be. So whatever that would even mean, it's not really possible, but we'll ignore that for now. So then, if that's the only way you could start to discuss how objective truths are really not fully objective, but I just want to clarify that objective truth, even if we say that it's permanent, irrespective of anyone seeing it, our objective truth is Hashem's subjective truth. In other words, it's only objective and permanent for us relative to the system. But when you look at it from the other side of things, from Hashem's perspective, so that's just Hashem's subjective perspective. Just Hashem's subjective perspective is permanent relative to us. That's kind of a more separate discussion. It's an important point to throw out there just to spark some thinking. But that's what we're talking about here. This is like the strength giver, the sustenance for people in the world who are truth seekers, people who are truly trying to understand the systems of reality. And this is also the light, the guide, this is what we're kind of, the revelation that we're kind of constantly driving towards and really also purveying and conveying to the world, for Bnei Yisrael in general. That's also, we're seeking that. We're supposed to be, on the general level, Bnei Yisrael is a nation of truth seekers. So on an individual level, you have a lot of variance there, and I would say a lot of Bnei Yisrael members seek truth in different forms, ends up sometimes because of a lack of Torah knowledge and a lack of knowledge about the things that we're discussing in these videos. They might only look for truth in small, nuanced, corners or boxes within the larger system that we're describing here. But nevertheless, the seeking of truth and the interest in trying to grow and evolve is something which is on the general level true for anyone who's part of Bnei Israel, and also anyone who's part of the world, depending on the level of self-awareness that each person has and starts off with and then also develops over time, you'll find a correlating seeking for truth as well. So these people, they constantly desire that the Emes Alyona, that again, the objective truth, in other words, the HaKodesh, the big picture should take over and should be victorious, and there should not be any more a perspective or many different perspectives that are warped and unbalanced. And people start to say, this is the way things are. No, this is the way things are. No, socialism is good. No, capitalism is good. No. And there's these constant battles and ebb and flow and dynamics where people are basically just constantly acting and reacting to each other, the right, the left. These are all just different sides of a big picture. You have a big picture, so socialism has certain things about it that are definitely positive, but so does capitalism, and these things are supposed to be working together. And if you do it in the proper balance on an individual level and know how to properly manage that, and you have a system which can do that, then you can actually achieve a big picture that includes all of the true things about each of these things, because no true things are in conflict. All true things have a place in a system. You have to just know where to apply each one, and if you apply them in the wrong place, then you will cause damage. And that's what we call falsehood, where you hear someone say, no, socialism is the solution to all of our problems, and you say, well, that seems like you're taking socialism too far beyond where it belongs, so the truth that's in socialism is now being applied where it doesn't really belong, and now I sense falsehood. So that's really what falsehood means. It means taking an idea which is true and applying it where it does not belong anymore, which is, again, a longer discussion, but what we want here is we want the truth, the total perspective, to really be clarified and victorious in people's lives. And that it should then kind of, exactly what we just said, it should be active in all the different paths and parts of life with its strength, its inexorable movement, that it just changes things. And as these truths are kind of revealed, so then they become what everyone is looking for. It's like, this is no longer like, it's something which everyone is interested in. So, and I would even, just to point out, I think that these ideas that we're discussing in these videos, of Cook's ideas and the principles that are kind of underneath them, are really things that are Dvar Mashavim L'chol Nefesh. Anybody who exists in this world wants to hear about these things. Just sometimes we have a couple of problems, either a particular person's life and the subsequent habituations and ways of thinking and life issues kind of make it hard for them to even approach some of these ideas. And secondarily, sometimes the way that we present ideas to people can get in the way, because we translate things in ways that are unclear. We sort of talk out of our own heads and are not clear enough on where the person that we're trying to teach or talk to about this is kind of positioned. And if you can kind of walk over to where they are in their minds and understand how they see the world and see what their issues are, then you can almost like reach your hand in and hold out your hand to them and then walk with them to these ideas. And everyone wants to understand themselves. Everyone wants to understand how they can be happy, how they can connect to themselves, to the reality around them. They want to be in harmony with what's real. It's just that there's so many different types of things that cause our perceptions to warp and fluctuate that without having an anchor that clarifies for us, it's very hard to really stay on track with these things. And so we get attached to this or that, and we start to become warped in our perspectives. So these things are really dvar mashavim l'chol nefesh. I remember when I was teaching in KBY, I had a colleague there who said to me that he thinks that a lot of people are not interested in what's called machshava or hashkafa, which basically means deep ideas about reality. So I said, I never experienced that in my life. Never saw a person who's not interested in these ideas. I never met a person like that. What I've met is people who have heard ideas formulated in such a way that they in no way come anywhere near bridging the gap between the person teaching or talking and the person on the listening end. And they were never able to really make a connection with the idea because it was presented in such a strange way. To present the ideas in ways that are real, that are very, again, not just that they're entertaining, but they're actually true sounding and they're very relevant and compelling. So then that actually will, there's no person on this earth who is not interested in that. It's just a question of finding the way to do that, which is about understanding yourself, understanding the people that you're talking to. And it's not even about being a teacher, it's just about being a person who is trying to understand things and has ways to share them with other people and wants to connect to people around them. And that's really what we're talking about here. These things really are shava l'chol nefesh. Everyone wants to hear them. Until you get to a point where you can't even explain even just basic understanding of connection to these principles to any average person. Like no person will tolerate just a basic understanding anymore once these things become ubiquitous like this, where they're just out there. It's just not going to work. It only will work with an expanded understanding of the secrets that are beyond reality, that are kind of above just the basic. That are in the heights. Again, in that system, they're all the way going up, all the way. This is Rumo Shel Olam, the area that's in the heights of reality. Like we said earlier, the opening of the gateways of Maaseh Bereshis, they themselves are actually the causes to opening the gateways to Maaseh Merkava. Shihan Hara El Yona, that's like the flow that comes from above. That's, again, working with our very primitive structural analogy here. The flow that goes from above to below, that intangible, the Hanhar El Yona, the Nahar means a river. So it's like the flow that comes from above. It kind of focuses all the senses and our will and our interests, our passions. And our perspectives and our feelings. So when you have this going on, the opening of these gateways, you start to understand reality around you, and then it kind of helps you to understand things that are also on the beyond side of things. So it kind of takes all these different facets. And you look at his terms. Chushim is your physical senses. Ritzonos is like it's part of the perceptual side of things that you perceive as being relevant to your life. The karos, your perspectives on all, and which is also kind of similar, and your emotions, your feelings. So what we can do with that is we can kind of take all those things and be misagel them. We can focus them. We can almost like harmonize them instead of having all these different things pulling on us. I'm interested in sports. I love this hobby. My career, my family, like all these like disparate aspects, and suddenly they all kind of come together and they harmonize. Where it's just you, and you become integrated, and you understand how to kind of put yourself together in a way that is effective and works. Which is why a great book about this is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is a book that is one of the most concise encapsulations of MS, of truth, this type of truth. Not just random truth, but like really organized way of, like structurally organized way of thinking about these things. That's really what this is saying. When you can kind of get everything where it belongs in its proper place, then it harmonizes all the different aspects and facets of yourself. That book is a good example, actually, of the exploration of the intangible side of reality going on in what we call the secular world, if there is such a thing as that. So he says, to sort of grasp the depth of all these incredibly powerful ideas. Which is the root of basically just of life. And again, life we can't define it right now. The concept of Chaim is a little bit also too complicated to explain in 2 seconds. But basically, the driving force of evolution and existence that we call Chaim, that is really ongoing. Until the life force, the drive to evolve and to expand and to become more and more conscious, which is what Chaim really is, they just flow. They move forward stronger and stronger with the passion and power of their kedusha, of their dedication. In other words, like when you kind of get it together and you kind of know what you're here for, and all the different parts of your life fall into place in that ultimate goal, which is an immortal goal to become more and more and more expanded in terms of your consciousness. So when you have that focus, that's what it means to be kadosh la Hashem. And that when you have that, all those parts are working, and then you have the natech kulos hamaves, it can destroy death. Because that driving force, the fact that your bodies will fall apart at some point, that this form of your body will fall apart at some point, is a temporary state. Your consciousness is endless. You can never actually die. So what happens is your body maybe won't be able to sustain, yourself and your activities for more than 100 years. And maybe if we upgrade the body over time so we can actually get it to last longer, and then we can eventually find a way to bring consciousness that has been separated from a body and reattach it. We call that tchias hamesim, resurrection of the dead. But at a certain point, like when you're very attached to life, you constantly want to evolve and grow and expand consciousness. So that kind of vibrant conscious self, what we call a neshama, it can never really stop living, because it will constantly strive and struggle to break back into a setting like this, where it will be able to manifest in a tangible way from its intangible home or source. So that's what we mean to conquer death. And we ultimately also conquer death on the physical side, as we basically eventually destroy or move beyond bodies that are so fragile and so limiting and so capable of just warping our perceptions away from what's real. So that's also conquering death, because death doesn't just mean your body just shuts off. Death means any time that you are out of sync with the totality of reality. So then we call that being partially dead. It's in the Gemara's phrase, for those who learned Gemara. So the phrase is Mali katla palga, mali katla kula. You can see the Ramban in his Shara Gemul, where he discusses the application of that phrase in this type of structure. And when you do that, and then all that is desirable in life will sweeten all of the ra. It will basically destroy or make it that all the ra suddenly becomes nothing. So not going to define Tov and Ra too much right now, but working with very basic definitions. So that's we could do a little more. Let's just do the next paragraph, and then we'll do a second video for the next part. And this perspective that is really towards the intangible, the ruchani, that is above, on the top of the Merkava side of things. Now he's talking about that Maisa Merkava dynamic, because again, this whole previous paragraph was about opening the doorways of Maisa Bereshis to then open doorways of Maisa Merkava. So, just like this tfisa, this perspective, simplifies the individual person's ratzon, your drive, your passion. It kind of directs you and kind of makes things just more balanced. And instead of it being too intense or not intense enough, or you're lazy, or you have days where you're too much or too little, it kind of makes everything just very simple. And it also makes it softens the connection between people. And if you think about why, well, if you look at this structure, the more fixated you are on this side of things, on the tangible side, the more prone you're going to be to insecurities and also to competitive dynamics. Insecurity and competitiveness come together by definition, because when you are on more in this space, on the bottom, then you're other from other people. There's distance. There's a lot of relativity and separation between you and other people, because you experience, your whole perception of reality is extremely attached or hyper-focusing on the more tangible side of life. And the tangible side of life means that now in your consciousness or in your perception, you're going to have a lot more thoughts and fixations on your tangible reality, which means your mortality, the mortality of your body. You'll think that you're more your body than you actually are. You'll also be more fixated on status and things that have to do with this setting, who's above and below each other, because I'm me and I'm separate from you. The intangible side of reality is what reveals for you the connection that you actually have with all other selves, that I'm one facet of a total consciousness, and so are you, and we really are the same self, just looking at reality from different perspectives. When you see that, and you think, and you actually look at the world through that lens, you see a physical person with all the intangible things kind of linked and manifest as that, and you see another person as someone who is just a part of you from a different angle, and we call that ahava. It means love. That's what love is. Love is the ability to see that someone else is a part of you, or even is you, just from a different angle. So when you do that, it softens your connections, because you're not going to be insecure with someone who's like that. It's kind of like if you have a dad who's playing chess against his son. So that dad's not going to feel bad if his son beats him in chess, unless he feels a lot of distance and insecurity from his son. But usually, the reason why I use that example is because fathers and towards sons usually don't feel that way. And a father will feel pride when a son beats him in chess, because the father will say, well, this person is kind of like, he's part of me. So it's like I beat myself, and I'm happy that I'm good at chess, so much like that he's good at chess as I would want him to be. So that's really what we're saying here. This perspective of harmonizing the intangible with the tangible, so it basically it softens these connections we have with other people, because now we no longer view each other so intensely as the tangible side of things. It opens all of your senses to relate to reality just the way that it is, instead of having all these, again, fixations. And like, because when you get very attached to certain aspects of this side of reality, so what you do is you tend to make certain parts of it very important. So again, I'll mention the status example. So you say, well, like I go to my job, and this is a very big part of my life. And then, I didn't get a promotion, or this person gets more credit, or that person gets more credit. Like all those internal emotional, again, those things are things that need to be dealt with on a practical level too. Like if there are actual situations where things are not being done properly at your job, then you can try to address that, which is a different issue. But in terms of the emotional issue and the fixation and the obsession with these things that people feel, they get home and they're upset and they're depressed. So these things are basically reflective of an underlying perception that is warped and that is too fixated on the tangible side of things. And the irony is that if you could kind of let go of that fixation and incorporate the totality perspective that we're talking about here, it would actually make you more effective in dealing with those kinds of problems. Because the reason why we feel so insecure in situations like that when we're in our job and not getting the things that we need, or getting ignored or whatever, is because we're so attached to the structure of the hierarchy and who's going to be on top and who's, am I going to get the credit and the raises and whatever it is that I need. And you're so worried about those things that you can't even just be confident and be whole and know how to, and that means you can't talk to your boss in a good way, because you're so worried that what if he doesn't like you even more, and if what you say now, he doesn't like you already, he's going to fire you. So that's really what gets in the way of being a confident person, is basically being too fixated on these things. And so here's what he's saying is, instead, you can actually open the doorway to connecting to reality as it actually is, not as you see it with all these warped perceptions like, wow, my boss is like, he controls my life. That's not true. He doesn't control your life. And people who are scared of their bosses, they perceive their boss as being in control of their life. So you're not seeing reality as it is. You're seeing reality through a lens that you have trained yourself to use, and that gets in the way of a lot of your effectiveness and it's just not true. It's not a truth-oriented perspective. And we were talking about trying to access truth by using these ideas. So here and what he says is the Osher and wealth and Eden is kind of like, it's hard to translate, but it kind of, again, like La'adeh means to make more soft. So it's like Gan Eden means like a very pleasurable or special or beautiful place. All the beauty of reality basically becomes revealed as you see these things, and you can actually love being alive, because life is something which is special and magical when you look at the world through these things. Even all the competitiveness and the dynamism and the pushing and shoving, but like that's all kind of part of each of us trying to sort of see who we are and who you are and who each person is, and to kind of realize that we're all part of oneself in this way. So then life for each individual becomes very broad, abundant, what's called in the 7 Habits book, the abundance mentality, which you can actually develop. Instead of having the scarcity mentality, where you're always worried there's not enough for me, you have the abundance mentality, which is that there is plenty for everyone. We can all coexist in a really happy way. And reality that is beyond each individual and above, all of life becomes lit up. Your inner world, your inner life becomes lit up, and you feel that kind of security and abundance, and becomes simple and clear, and the larger world around you also becomes lit up and magical. And that's really what the result of these types of this perspective actually is. So we're going to stop here, and we're going to continue with the second half of this piece in the next video.